woman's mind is her biggest sexual organ. If we're talking about it, then you're thinking about it. If you're thinking about it, then we're one step closer to actually putting this down and moving forward.
Hello, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets, cause we know where we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocketeer, ain't stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up.
All right, so today is a very special episode. If you're a guy, especially, but for the women too, right? If you have intimacy issues, if you have relationship problems, and you just can't figure it out, this might be your ticket. This might be the golden bullet for you to solve all of it. Because today, we got none other than the sex doctor, the love doctor, the man, the myth, the legend, the women and men's health, Mr. Dr. Andre Harris.
Thank you. Welcome.
Dr. Harris, what's up, man? You all right?
I'm doing well.
You're in the Maxed Out Podcast studio, man. What do you think so far?
Looking really nice.
And we played, man. Hey, Miles, pull that music up real quick. I want to get him in the mood. I want to get him in the mood to solve everybody's relationship issues that are out there.
Wow.
All right. You're getting me feeling some sort of way. My wife's going to be here in a few minutes. Which, by the way, Dr. Harris, you didn't know this, but I'm going to tell you, Miles, he helped my marriage and my relationship. And he might not even know this, but everything in our life has impacts, and you guys hear me talk about it on our podcast all the time, is that we never know how we impact people's lives. And Dr. Harris has had an incredible impact on my marriage and quite honestly probably got us out of a funk that we were in. And you might not even know the depth that goes to. And we're going to talk about all that later. But let's dig into you, man. Like, I joked around. I said the sex doctor. I said love doctor. But you are an actual doctor.
I'm an actual physician. Yeah. I'm an OB-GYN. Yeah.
OB-GYN. And but that's not just it. You're an incredible entrepreneur also, which is why we wanted you to come in here. You know, this show is about entrepreneurship. And finding kind of incredible and unique stories for, people to listen to that they can attach onto, because entrepreneurship just doesn't mean that you go out and start one business or that you go out and you buy real estate or that you do something. And there's different paths that everybody can go through. And one of the things that I talk to my kids about all the time, and people hear me, if they follow me on social media, they hear me all the time. I don't care if my kids go to college. I don't think that you have to go to college. I support if you do want to go to college.
Yeah.
But I think you're really like, man, your story is so powerful because you've done both. You are an entrepreneur, but you also spent a lot of time in college.
Spent a lot of time in college. I've always wanted to be a doctor. It was 6th grade that I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I think.
Hold on. 6th grade.
6th grade.
So you were. They're in the gymnasium at lunchtime.
Right.
He's like, Dr. Harris is in gym. Come on in.
Yeah, it was. I found a lot of my colleagues coming through med school knew kind of early. It was kind of rare to see people that may have thought of it once they got to college or anything like that. Most people knew going into college that they wanted to be a doctor, at least at my med school.
So you're from South Bend, Indiana?
From South Bend, Indiana, home of the Fighting Irish, who, as we all know, are doing pretty well this season.
All right, so a little secret. I joked with you about it and said, you're not a Notre Dame fan, are you? And you said yes. But the truth is, growing up, I was a Notre Dame fan.
Okay.
All through childhood, and I still love Notre Dame. I don't know why. I think it was because back at the time, I always wanted to pick something different than what my family liked, right? So, like, nobody in my family liked Notre Dame. They liked North Carolina or Ohio State or whatever. And Notre Dame just talked to me, and especially when Rudy came out.
And they were, Notre Dame being with their contract with NBC. So I kind of remember the time frame when the NBC helped them to paid for them to put the lights on the stadium, because prior to that, Notre Dame didn't have any night games. All their games had to be during the day because you couldn't see anything. So I think NBC was instrumental in them being able to get lights put on the stadium. And their 88 was the last year that they had a national championship. So that was like right when I was graduating high school. So I was deep in at that particular point in time. Lou Holtz at the time and Rocket Ismail was you could count on him for at least one run back for a touchdown every game. So it was kind of a magical time for me then, and I've been a Notre Dame fan since then. Indoctrinated my sons. All my kids are they're frustrated because we've had all these not great seasons, and they're like, "Why do I love this team?" And you can't go anywhere else.
It's family traditions. There's a couple country songs out there about that, so I think we'll be all right. But South Bend, I mean, you grew up in a pretty normal middle class family. Was your mom and dad doctors?
No. My mom worked for the AT&T for that time before it became AT&T. She worked for the telephone company. My dad worked for White Farm, which made equipment for doing farming, but then transitioned to the city once White Farm laid them off in the 70s. And both my parents are pastors. They're kind of next phase of life that they moved into. They've been pastors for Charlotte and I have been married for 30 years. They've been pastors for about that long. So
nice. So sixth grade. Was there something that happened? Was there something that you remember? Was there like a moment where you're like, I'm going to be a doctor? Or was it just like, like it just felt right?
I think it kind of felt right. I had a science mind and kind of that intrigue for that area. And then, and probably, which probably affected a lot of young Black people at that time, was the Cosby Show came out. Cosby Show came out when I was in junior high. And so it was first time. And if you think looking back at Black people in any type of television, you didn't have successful Black people in television. Probably the most successful would have been looking at George and Weezy, and he was a business owner and that type of thing. But you didn't see this professional feel that you saw with the Cosby Show. And so it kind of just reinforced everything for me at that particular point in time. And it was my A, B, C, D, E, F, and G that I was going to do was be a doctor.
That was your plan.
That was it.
Right. The bigger question is this, right? And I know what the myths are about males that become OB-GYNs. And I think about every time my wife goes to a male OB-GYN. But why did you decide for that to be your specialty? Like, what was it besides the fact that you're going to get taken around beautiful women all the time?
What we do as OB-GYNs, I don't think it's a fantasy that any guy wants to do. Going through medical school, I got a scholarship to pay for medical school called the National Health Service Corps. That National Health Service Corps required that you had to do two different things. One, you had to be in primary care, which included family practice, internal medicine, peds, OB-GYN, and I think psychiatry at the time. And the second was that when I repaid my time back, I had to be in an underserved community, and so I had to fit those two things together. And so I originally kind of thought about being a family practice doctor, and then probably more of the entrepreneurial thought process looked at how much does an OB-GYN make opposed to a family practice doctor, and there's a difference. There's a higher difference in. Then I kind of fell in love with delivering babies, which I did for in Dayton for a couple of decades, and then and I liked surgery. So OB-GYN was a nice mix of the primary care field because you took care of a lot of women. A lot of women they may only go see their OB-GYN once a year, so you have to kind of cover all the bases with them, and then. Been able to do the surgical side of it, which I love doing surgery over the years too.
I delivered a baby once.
Did you?
I did. Yeah, right in the hallway of a bathroom down in one of our south suburbs when I was still at the police department.
Oh wow!
It was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life.
It is initially, but it's probably one of the. I share this when I do our in my current position as a chief medical officer, and we talk about the patient experience. pregnant women are the only people that want to get to the hospital. They are like really pushing to get there. And so being a part of that with women over the years has just been miraculous. It's been a really good opportunity to be in the lives of people. And now that my grandchildren are playing basketball and doing stuff, I'll go into a gym and there's babies that I delivered. Probably the most impactful thing that happened not too long ago is I had a sophomore in college come to shadow me in the office that I delivered, and she wants to be a doctor. And
It's
it was
pretty incredible,
yeah,
huh?
and it's just to see that kind of impact on people's lives and be this many years later and seeing those types of things is crazy.
And early on in your career, you probably don't think about that a lot, right? Like you don't think about the impact that you have. And I know for me, I coach a lot of sports.
Yeah.
And when I started off, I was thinking like, man, I love coaching. I love the X's and O's. I love, and for me, I've always loved being in the underserved communities with my business, with real estate, with coaching, because I grew up in the inner city as well and grew up in a very poor family and things like that. So I've always wanted to give back, but that was my reason why I really spent a lot of time coaching and doing the things that I wanted to do in those communities. But as 10, 15, 20 years go back and you start having kids that you coach their parents. Like I had a couple twins on my baseball team 2 years ago that their dad called me out of the blue, wanted to be on my baseball team. And I coached him back when he was in 6th grade football.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
I'd feel like the feeling's probably similar, right?
Yeah,
Like you don't think
yeah.
about it early on, but then as you get like a decade down the road and little things start happening, you're like, man, I've touched a lot of people.
There's a concept called generavity, and it's the concept of essentially what are you leaving behind, and that's probably one of my core beliefs is what am I leaving as a legacy? How do I do for my family as far as our finances are concerned? Giving that financial literacy to my children. How do I do as far as a Black man is concerned? Because depending on what you watch and what you consume, you don't always see the best light of Black men. And so being an example, and I don't think honestly don't feel like it's a one-off. I think there's a lot of solid guys out there that are doing a really good job. But the narrative sometimes doesn't get expressed. And so I'm really huge on really taking care of, I have my 4 sons and my daughter is the oldest, and really just pushing into my sons and making sure that I'm doing all the things that I need to do as a father to make sure that they have that foundation that they can build off of that, because then it becomes generational. Kind of the same concept of generational wealth is that somewhere down the line, somebody put a huge investment in that other people can live off of. And because of the compounding interest of it, that you're not starting from the basement when it comes to those things. You are living off of something that got planted a long time ago. And that's really, that's probably the core of who I want to be able to be, that, prayerfully 25, 30 years from now, when I'm going on, there's this, I learned this from my dad. I learned this from Poppy, which is my grandfather's name. And that really passes on to the men in my family.
Yeah. So, let's talk about that real quick, because I think that, race has a huge impact in a lot of things in our society, right?
Yeah.
And I think us being able to have an honest conversation about race and about all of the topics that are in society, like that's the only way that we move forward as a community, white and Black and everything else together. And it's important to me that we always do that. But when I look at your story, I think it's more than kind of just what you said, right? Like at that time when you were getting ready to go to medical school and you were thinking about being a doctor, it wasn't like our medical industry was flooded with Black male doctors.
It still isn't.
Yeah.
The numbers right now, which is probably even more alarming, the number of Black male physicians in the United States is equivalent to what it was in the 70s. The number actually is going down, and you can understand. Yeah, I can understand a bit of why it is. When you look at our community, athletes are the pinnacle. Now, if you do any math and you look at any percentages, you would see your risk of your your probability of actually becoming a NFL player or NBA player is so small. You know, all you got to do is look at the draft. You know, all you got to do is look at and see how many spots are they actually. You do better playing football because there's more spots, but when the NBA, you know, they're not picking up that many people, and it's the same. It's the same on each level. And so my wife and I did boys basketball. She was the coach. She was a boys basketball coach her entire career. I did the books. I was the table guy. And I remember having this conversation with some of the guys that we did AAU with, and they were juniors. And I said to the guys, I said, if no one has talked to you yet, you're not playing college basketball. You're a junior. You're getting ready to go into your senior year. If nobody has talked to you, if nobody's just going to magically knock on your door right now. So now, what is it that you're going to base your life off of, and where are you going to be? Even for the guys that are that cream of the crop. Somebody got to get in their ear and help them when it comes to the finances, because you have access to a lot of money, but we both know, you know, the more money you make, the more money that you'll want to spend. And so at some point in time, you need to get that financial literacy that allows you to be able to take, you know, it just is amazing, because if you sign an NIL contract and you, as a sophomore, freshman in college, and you get $4 million, and somebody can talk to you and get $1 million of that dollars and put it in something. It don't even have to be anything huge. The compounded interest by the time that you get out of college, or that you're done possibly playing any kind of basketball, because not just because you get an NIL or are you going to be that next coming, you'll be set. You know, but you have to teach. Somebody has to be there to be able to grab a hold of you and say, hey, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, man, I agree with you so much. One of my passions is teaching our youth about financial literacy, because I went through it. You know, besides the fact that I grew up poor, like that's a real story, in the trailer park, and I had no financial literacy. So even when I got out and I had a good job, not making crazy money, but making $65,000 back in the early 2000s, I didn't know what to do with it, and got myself in incredible amounts of debt. You know, it's like I was worse off after I had a good career than what I was before. And it took me a long time to figure out financial literacy and figure out that I had to do it on my own. So is any opportunity that I can take now to talk to a young person, to talk to, and most of the time they don't want to listen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I love it, and I love that passion. I want to get into the high schools and be able to talk to young kids, especially young athletes. Like we talk about that at practice. My baseball team that I have now, travel team, super successful. I mean, they finished third in the country, first in the state, first in the region last year. They'll be 13U this year. But every practice, we spend a little bit of time at the end talking about business, talking about wealth, talking about financial literacy, talking about entrepreneurship, talking about college. Because I think it's important, and I want them to hear the things that I didn't hear growing up, because you're right, man. You get out and you get a chunk of cash, and you don't know what to do with it. It's very easy to put yourself in a worse situation than what you were before. You know, it's like the typical lottery winner that you know goes out and buys this big fancy house. Well, I didn't know I had to pay taxes on this thing. I didn't know I had to pay property taxes, and
oh my God,
you know, I didn't know what happened when I got to replace a $15,000 sewer line out to the street because I spent all the money on a house, right? And that's what we need to avoid. But you know, kudos to you, man, because you're doing it on both fronts. Not only are you a great father with your 4 kids and the one that's kind of semi-adopted, if you will, you have a gorgeous wife, but you have a great career. We're going to dive into that here in just a second. Your kids all seem to be doing well. I've met a couple of them. You're teaching, you're living it. Like, you are an example. You're a strong, black male in the medical field, which, like you said, does not have a great percentage of doctors like yourself, especially in OB-GYN. Like, what is the percentage of black male physicians in OB-GYN?
The percentage of it just Miami Valley Hospital, or Premier as a whole, we have residency programs. So we're teaching facility, and there each year is 6 residents that come through. So you finish up med school, then you decide, as you're finishing up, what you want to do. And for our residency, which is 4 years long, we have 6 people to get chosen. They get on the squad, of course, and 3 of them are military and 3 of them are civilian. So if you're coming out as a civilian, you only have 3 spots that you can get into at our residency program. We historically my residency director tried to keep male and female even. So we had 3 and 3 pretty much across the board for the 4 years I was there. After I finished up, which was in 2006, the numbers dropped off and it was pretty much all female for several years. It's getting even, there's less and less guys going into obstetrics and gynecology. You know, it is an acquired taste. It is something that you have to find yourself in. I remember very vividly taking care of the first woman, doing an annual exam on a woman who was my mom's age. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do? For me, it was a bit more of just like, wow, I'm really at this point. And the one thing that I had to get very secure in is that one, and so I, you know, being very real, because especially when we're talking about sex and different things, one is never letting my mind wander when I'm taking care of a woman. To me, that was a bit of the Bible kind of talks about this, that you can get into a place because your mind goes there. I mean, nobody just stumbles into somebody's bed. You've thought it through. Everything is kind of worked through with that. So I made it a point to never let my mind wander. I always came very clinical with the way that I dealt with patients. And then, you know, the other thing is just always recognizing how I was going to affect the patients that I was taking care of, and making sure that I wasn't, you know, just the demeanor, keeping women comfortable. Because if I had somebody who came to see me, it may be somebody I went to church with, or it may be a friend of the family, but I always had the mindset that if she walked through the door, that I made sure that she was comfortable. Now, I've had some patients that have been, I remember one patient, I was like, do you not want to be here? Because we don't have to do this. And I'm like, because you seem extremely uncomfortable. But if a patient was comfortable to see me, then I made sure that I presented myself in a very, very comfortable manner. Because it really is it's saying a lot to somebody chooses you. You know, there's in Dayton, there's plenty of OB-GYNs, and the fact that somebody would choose me to be the one that would take care of them for their pregnancy, or take care of them for the GYN needs. And then as we move forward, doing all the different things that we're doing in weight loss and hormone therapy, it became special, you know, just because there's plenty of people to choose from. That you were okay with coming to see me, and that we can make a good impact on you. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business, and there's a customer service component of every business, and it's not like people have to come to you, right? Like they can make a decision, and there's lots of OB-GYNs out there, so they have to make a conscious decision that they want to see Dr. Andre Harris, right? Yeah, and that's a big part of it. But so OB-GYN, You've been the chief medical officer now for, is it approaching 2 years?
5 years.
It's been
5 years. Yeah, because I started out at one of our smaller hospitals and then just moved to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, like, as far as your career goes, like you're just hitting on all cylinders when it comes to your career. But there's a better part of your story, and I say better because I think it's the more interesting part of your story. Not that you become an OB-GYN and a chief medical officer isn't incredible in itself.
Yeah.
But I think really kind of where our paths crossed, and we'll get to that in a minute, but very early on out of school, you started a women's health practice, right? And has it always been called Horizons?
It always has been called Horizons. I remember Charlotte and I sitting down and trying to figure out what the name was going to be, and kind of going back. And she actually came up with the name Horizons Women's Healthcare. The very interesting part about this is that, one, I had a job lined up, completely had a job. So remember, I said that I had my National Health Service scholarship that I had to repay back, and I had to be in an underserved community. West Dayton met the criteria, but I had already secured a job in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Because it was with a clinic that already was National Health certified, and they already were doing this, and this was a place that you can go. The story behind this, honestly, is that We have really been praying on what we should be doing, and my wife says to me, "Do you feel like this is where God wants us to be at?" And I'm like, I said, "I got a job. I know that for sure."
Right.
And the other piece of this is that if I did not end up in one of these underserved areas, you owe the government, you owe the federal government 3 times the amount of money that they gave you. And they were going to get their money because people had defaulted on these scholarships before in the past, and so they put this huge penalty. This was all of your schooling, all of your books, your fees, and they gave you a stipend while you went through. So this was going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars that you would have owed back if you didn't do what you needed to do. So me and my wife were sitting down talking about this, and she's like, "Are you sure this is what you?" The way that she poses, she said, "Is this what God is telling you to do?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And I'm kind of stumbling. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to tell him I'm not coming." So we're just going to trust God that He's going to do what we need. As soon as I hang up the phone with them, and this is exactly how it happened. As soon as I hang up the phone with them, my pager goes off. This kind of dates me a little bit, but my pager goes off. And when my pager goes off, it's to the hospital. When I would leave the hospital as a resident, I wasn't trying to go. There was no reason y'all needed to hit me up.
Right.
But somebody was trying to get in touch with me, and based on the telephone number that they put in there. So I call up to the hospital, and they're like, the guy gets on the phone, and he said, "Dr. Harris, I understand that you want to stay in the area. What can we do for you?" This happened exactly like that, and really was this testimony of us really trusting God leading us in that point. And that's where we ended up getting the money to start Horizon. So I was able to come out and not be the insurance thing for a new for any physician, any hospital. Insurance game is a tough game. Medical insurance, physicians are the only people that do things on credit. If you kind of think about what insurance is the day that you showed up to see me, your insurance was valid. It does not secure the fact that I'm going to get paid.
Right. Because
when I send my bill through, then the insurance company will decide whether or not I did what I was supposed to do, all the T's crossed, the I's dotted, that kind of stuff. And insurance denials are a big thing. So when you start looking at this as a young doctor, entrepreneur, which, and it was interesting because when you and I talked the first time, you were calling me an entrepreneur. I was like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I didn't really think about it, but there aren't very many people that are starting practices. It's just, it used to be the thing back in the day, but now a lot of doctors either go into a practice that's owned by somebody else, or they're hired. The larger percentage are hired by the hospitals, and so it really was. There's a lot of bumping my head against the wall stuff that happens when you start a business.
Sure. Now, when you started Horizons, because the doctor field, like you kind of knew what paths you could take as a doctor, right? Like, and you're going to be an OB-GYN, so at your goal there is like, I got to get a job at a hospital or a practice that needs me, right? But when you started Horizons, did you, and I think I just heard you say it, but did you think about yourself as an entrepreneur at that point?
I did. I didn't. I guess I did in the sense that the way I described myself at that point was a young dinosaur, because the concept of starting a practice was very old school medicine. I mean, even to this day, you just don't see very many people starting practices. Practices used to be a retirement fund, because you knew once you're finished up, when you were ready to transition out of your practice, somebody would be there to buy it, and that would be your nest egg of money that you would have, because you knew somebody would buy your practice. It's a different world now. I remember one of my mentors, when he transitioned to our health system, and they essentially were buying him out. One day he was self-employed, the next day he was employed by the hospital, but that kind of windfall of buying charts and that kind of stuff, is really kind of going by the wayside. So it was a very entrepreneurial type thing, which I got all the scars to prove because starting a business, it's really. It is the concept. It's starting a business, which is the huge piece. Learning how to employ people, understanding payroll taxes. Lord have mercy. Dealing with HR issues. All of those different things that's the non-sexy part of being an entrepreneur that people.
It's like the hot dog, right?
Oh, you don't want to know how that is made.
You never do.
No,
but it's interesting. I had my mentor in here, and we filmed a show together. It's probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he's always said something that I really believe in, right? Which is like the first company that you start, it's the hardest, it's the most painful, but at that point, like once you figure out how to get a company up and rolling. And that becomes something that you've done. If you do it on your own, now if you hire somebody to do all your stuff, like, you're never going to learn, right? So, like, I really believe that you need the battle scars, you need the battle wounds, you need to be in the foxhole with somebody. But after you learn it, you already know 80% of what you need to do if you want to start another business, right?
Have you ever seen on when you apply for LLC, say like you use Rocket, one of the online things.
Yeah.
And that I remember this because when I was helping my son do something for his little side business that he has, and I was helping him get his LLC and doing all the different stuff that he needed to do, that one of these online places will charge you for an EIN number. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, if you don't have knowledge, if you don't know that you can just go to the IRS website and actually just put it in and get one, you're paying these people to do that step of this because of ignorance, and of course they wrap it up in the whole package because they're like, well, you're going to need this and you're going to need this. And most of the stuff that they have on there, all of the add-ons that they have on there are stuff that you can go out and get done for free.
Oh, sure. But it's their rapid, accelerated business like package, right?
Right.
But that is very important because at that point, when people are trying to do that, most people don't have a lot of money at that point when they're trying to start a business, and spending an extra $100 or an extra $150, like that can be super impactful to people. Yeah. And I always try to go back, like when I'll have people, man, I get a ton of messages, ton of DMs from people that follow me, and they want a little bit of advice. And there'll be a simple question like, well, how do I start an LLC? And sometimes I got to put myself back because I'm like, man, that's one of the most basic things that you can do.
Yeah.
As a business. But I got to think back to 13, 14 years ago when I did my first one. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know how to do this back then. And it took me a lot of researching. But those simple things can really help propel people into that, right? But at the end of the day, you guys start Horizons, and it starts off just female health, right? And you're doing like hormones and helping females like feel the best that they can feel, right? Taking blood work, seeing where their levels are at, and really just helping them live the best life that they can live based on their age. Is that a summary of kind of what you guys are doing?
It's honestly, I'll even take a step before that. I was hugely into delivering babies. So I was doing the whole, my life existed with taking care of pregnant women. That was from 2006 until 2021 was my last delivery. But probably for that first chunk of time, it was me running to the hospital all the time and delivering babies and doing circumcisions on little boys and all this other craziness, and then doing surgeries. Probably around 2010, a colleague of mine, Dr. Rhea Rouser, she came on to the practice, and so we started sharing space. And she was a family practice doctor. Sometime, I think it was probably like around so we worked together from 2010 to 2020. Probably like around 2014, she brought in the concept to Charlotte and I about weight loss. Around that same time frame is when I started looking at hormone therapy. Now, this is where we get into the whole the sex doctor part of this. Our marriage was rocky from an intimacy standpoint.
And your health was a little bit too, right?
Overweight. Yeah.
Miles, you got that picture?
Oh, my
I got
goodness.
A picture. Let's look at this.
Oh, Lord.
Let's look at this.
Oh, yeah.
This was your
my TED Talk. Yeah.
But look at the top right. Like, I've been there, and I battle with my weight, and I know you wasn't feeling great there, but intimacy in a relationship is what do you attribute to the intimacy issue with your relationship at that point?
I think you have to look at this at multiple different layers, because for a lot of guys, and nothing is all or nothing, but for a lot of guys, their love language is physical touch. For a lot of females, their love language has to do more with time spent, being that spending quality time together. Those two don't mean the same thing.
Right.
They don't go hand in glove, because just because we spend a lot of time together and we spend all this intimate time together doesn't mean it's going to end up with us rolling around in the bed later on. So for my wife and I think there were two separate things that were going on. One was that hormonally she was changing as she was getting older, and older, for some women you see their hormones start to change in their early 30s. If you kind of look at this from a scientific standpoint, everybody's hormone levels are going to fall as you get older. It's just life. So her hormone levels were changing. We were 4 kids in, fifth was there with us also. And so life kind of plays into this whole thing. And then I'm also getting to be a bigger boy, so then if there is anything that will distract, it's there, so if you,
not to mention you're probably burning the candle at both ends.
We're burning the candle, but I was ready to burn other things too. So I was good with, being busy, and my sex drive was still good, but hers wasn't. And so when I look back, I see that we were just in different spaces. We're in different spots where she wasn't in it. She wasn't drawn to me. I was, and then it starts to mess with my mind, and I see this with a lot of guys, because then you're trying to figure out, okay, what's wrong with me, and so then that picture and that time frame, and with that TED Talk that I did, I really got into, all right, let me get myself better. Let me start to lose weight. Let me start to lift. Let me start to do the different things to kind of pull myself together. The reality is that it still has, each individual has to come to a place where they feel, for a better way of saying, that they feel sexy. Because for women, their biggest sex organ is their brain. If their head's not in it, and if you think about it, this is the reason why you can see women do porn or be sex workers, because I don't really need to be there to get this done. It's that, but the intimacy portion of stuff, the love making itself, her mind has to be there. For guys, all we need is a strong breeze and the right person to walk in front of us.
Who told you that?
Yeah.
You think that's all we need?
That's all. You know what? Once again, I won't overgeneralize, but that we need to be. There's a different thing that will click for us. But I think that if guys don't recognize that there's love making that has to happen before the bedroom. If you don't recognize that you can't be the person who does not pay attention to her needs, doesn't understand her love language, and then expect her to in turn fulfill yours, you're going to be way off with that. And that's that one part. The other part that transformed us was changing her hormone levels, hers and mine.
So did it start with just kind of exploring her hormone levels, and then it kind of led into, and before we get there, what would you say about a middle-aged 50-year-old black comedian that's having issues with his sex life named Donnell? He has not read the 5 love languages.
He hasn't.
I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. Chapman is not his friend.
5 love languages: Neiman and Marcus, Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton, And then Dolce & Gabbana. That's the 5 love
Those
languages.
5 love languages. Now you know what, and he's being facetious and being funny, but this is a misnomer for men that you have got to grab a hold of. And I share this with any young married guy. I say, first of all, things are going to change. The person that you married a month ago, in 6 months is not going to be the same person. A year from now, she's not going to be the same person. You're going to change. Number 2, when she has a baby, and I just had this with a young guy who had just had his first child, I said, please get yourself prepared because things are about to change drastically. Hormonally, she's about to change, and sexually, things are about to go. They're going to change, and once again, everything is not that everything fits everybody, but recognizing that things are going to change. So then mentally, you have to approach things differently. For us, for Charlotte and I, the hormone side of things was part of the process. It was a portion of the entirety of things. When she was my first patient, so she was the first person that I learned how to do hormone therapy with from this kind of different angle because we do hormone pellet therapy. And with dealing with her, first of all, I saw what her hormone levels look like. The story was that we were at a conference and I ran into a lady another physician who worked in Chicago, and I asked her what she did. And she asked me what I did, and she said, well, where do you work at? And I said, well, I'm in Dayton. She said, well, if you were in Chicago, I wasn't going to tell you what I did. And I'm like, well, what do you do? And she starts telling me about this hormone.
She was holding the keys that came.
Yeah, she was holding this, and
what she was doing.
And she said, you need to go get trained. Go talk to this guy. I went off and got trained, and it was an investment. This was another kind of entrepreneurial point for us because dealing with insurance is, once again, it's a lot. There's a lot of revenue cycle management that you really have to understand to keep yourself afloat, because the people that I saw a month ago, sometimes 2 months ago, I'm just getting paid for those people. The surgeries that I did 30, 60, 90 days ago may not be paid. I remember I had to fight with an insurance company for a hysterectomy that I did for a year before I got paid for it. So I'm looking at this from an entrepreneurial standpoint, if I look back at it, because we had to make this business decision on how we were going to pivot. And at the time, it was an investment because, of course, the doctor that I went to go train with, he wasn't doing this for free. And he had at the time, he had a subscription model for his hormone pellet calculator that he used to determine where you're supposed to start at. So you had to sign up with him for 2 years. So he had that ongoing revenue coming and contractually that you had to go into. So this was a big investment for us as a young business of saying, are we going to do this? I had to fly out there because I'm the only OB-GYN in the office. I'm taking time away from the patients.
Sure. I'm
taking this time off in the office that every patient I see is generating income. And so we had to make this kind of shift and change. And it ended up being a great decision for us. I ended up being able to get off of his pacifier because my wife pushing me. She was like, "You've got to be able to figure out what the dosages are, how you get these starting dosages." And I'm like, I don't know how he came up with this. And I go out and start looking. And there was a point in time when he decided that he's passed away, so none of this stuff is going to be a big issue. But he tried to do he tried to get a patent for this at one point in time. Mm-hmm. And so the entire calculator, everything was online in his patent submission. And that's where I got it from. I got the calculator.
Just by going out and using resources.
Yeah,
right?
When I got the calculator, put it in a spreadsheet, called them up and said, "Hey, I'm done. I've fulfilled my time with you for the 2 years," and we get off. And then the rest became, kind of how we just built throughout the years.
Now, let me ask you this, though. when we look, and I've heard you talk about insurance and payments are delayed for a while and things like that, it kind of reminds me of like real estate, right? Like when I invest in a property, the myth is that you get rich when you have all these properties. The truth is it's a very slow burn for us investors, right?
Yeah.
But what we do is we find other ventures, we find other businesses that are cash heavy businesses that kind of support those gaps between waiting for the slow burn to really take fire. Did you see Horizons and the hormone treatments? Did you see that as kind of like a cash injection that can help the gap between some of that slow burn with the insurance payments?
I did. I saw it was one when I saw the switch happen with Charlotte. I'm like, okay, we are definitely on to something. You know, my wife whose desire is shot and gone, we've revived this. And like I said, it became one piece of the puzzle because then she, you know, there is we're probably more sexual beings when we are younger and when things seem taboo and you're fresh into a new relationship, all those different types of things. And then as you age and you get older, you're doing the same thing. Moves probably ain't changed. You're probably approaching things the same way. And so this helped to spark and ignite things. And then that became the catalyst for us learning more about each other sexually and being at a point where we can express things in a different way and knowing, you know, talking to your significant other about what do you like, what don't you like.
Yeah.
You know, those all became conversations. Now, if you're talking about things, remember I said woman's mind is her biggest sexual organ. If we're talking about it, then you're thinking about it. If you're thinking about it, then we're one step closer to actually putting this down and moving forward.
So let's talk about. So she does the pellet injection, and that was your first client. So was it like instant? Did you come home, candles lit, R. Kelly's on, and she's like, "I'm ready to go. Like, let's go."
It wasn't instant. Matter of fact, probably the first dosage that I gave her, the medicine, because it's a delayed absorbable type of thing, it takes about a month for the levels to get where they're supposed to. The very first time that I did this, that I kind of was working through how we're going to do things with her, I made her hormones worse. So not only did it not work, but it made it worse. But she was at a point where we both recognized we needed to do something. And she was like, let's just keep on. But I remember that conversation so well because she was just pissed about the fact that now she's having more issues, having more hot flashes, and went back, did lab work, saw what was going on. So it was probably about month 2, and it was on and popping. It was on.
So here's the funny thing. Here's how I end up meeting you. And you know, my wife is a nurse.
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Well, she actually is now an entrepreneur and runs our developmental disability and mental health, you know, group homes. But all of her little nurse friends were going to this little doctor, right? And Lisa decides to go, which happens to be you. And I didn't know who you were at the time. But man, it was probably a month or 2 after she had first saw you, and she was wanting to have sex all the time. And it was like, and like my sex drive was there, right?
Right.
But I was overweight. I was working nonstop because it was like really, it was pretty early on, like right in that middle part of my entrepreneur phase. I was tired. I was working, you know, 6 a.m. to 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I was taking late night phone calls. I still had a W-2 job at the time. I hadn't kind of went full entrepreneur, but man, she was wanting it all the time. And I thought, I can't keep up. I can't like what? Like she starts telling me what she's doing. Like it's her little clique of friends that's going to Dr. Harris. So I remember I pull up your TED Talk and I watch it and I'm like, man, I still feel good. I still feel athletic. I can still hit a baseball. I can shoot hoops. Like I feel good, but I knew something wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And when I first came to you, I got the testosterone pellets and man, my energy levels just went like crazy. And you said it a minute ago, but it really did. And we were going through because she was working a lot. I was working a lot. We had a new kid. The intimacy was kind of slack. And that has such an effect on the entire relationship, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we weren't in a great place. But after I came to you and like my energy levels were back up, one, it helped me work so much better. Like it really helped me in my entrepreneur career. even being able to come in and just get, the vitamin shots and, things like that, just like simple little things. And it made me feel better about myself. But I could hang with my wife now because I'll be honest, she was like a little 21-year-old girl, man, like all the time. And it was crazy to me. I'm like, there's no way that a little pellet is doing this.
Right. And it's the crazier part about it, I think, is I think what raising the testosterone levels does, and this doesn't work across the board because I've had some patients that it didn't make a difference to them. But I think what it does is that you see, and it's actually the literature, the mainstream medical literature is now starting to catch up with this, and it's finally hit obstetrics and gynecology literature where they're like, oh, raising testosterone levels in women actually affects their sexual desire. And we're like, yeah, it does. The hormone pellets have been in the United States since the 1930s. I think why it didn't grow like it need to is that these come from a natural source, so you can't patent it.
Right.
And so because you can't patent it, there's not a pharmaceutical company that's jumping on, and you see like where I get the pellets from are from compounding pharmacies. All pharmacies are compounding pharmacies. All big pharma is a compounding, but they just have settled into this big pharma thing that they take. So, as an example, Prempro, which is the estrogen and progesterone pill that kind of set hormone therapy back some years ago. So in 2006, there was a big study that came out, and it showed. And I remember, 2002, because it was when I first started residency. The study that came out, and it said that the hormone replacement therapy was causing breast cancer. And you had this drove of women that came off of hormone therapy. It was all over the news. Everybody was coming off of hormone therapy. Prempro, it comes from horse urine. So the Prem is pregnant mare urine is where they get Premarin from. So the only way that you can, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, the only way that you can patent something is that if you actually have a unique hormone, which is kind of like when you look at all of the vitamins and different stuff. It's the reason why all of those are over the counter. You can't patent something that is kind of naturally occurring. You can't patent vitamin C. It's a naturally occurring thing. But if you make a different molecule, then you can patent it. And I think that's where hormone therapy, where pellet therapy came, is that these come from sources of plant sources and that kind of stuff. And so because it's not patented, nobody jumped onto it to make billions of dollars off of it. But as a way of delivering hormones and how it affects women and men overall, it's been real solid. And it's been for us as a business, it's been what we've transformed to over from 2014 till today. Now my practice, if you look at it, even though the sign still says Horizons Women's Healthcare, honestly, we need to redo the sign up front and just call it Horizons Healthcare, because we're really focused more on hormone therapy and weight loss with a little sprinkling of GYN. I'm actually now more of a medical director for my practice than practicing physician because my nurse practitioner is in the office.
Yeah, well, you know what I see from you. And first of all, I pay more to your practice than most people pay for their mortgage payments in a month, just for the record, right? But I believe in it, and it's worked, and it's helped me. It's helped me physically, it's helped me mentally, it's helped. Like our sex life is incredible, and I think even when we go months where we maybe aren't on the schedule, or like I haven't been getting pellets lately, but she does. It allowed us to really open up. And you said earlier, like we start talking about what do you like, what do you want, like let's do something different, and it can be simple things, and not to like, I don't know. There's lots of people listening to the show, right? But you can do simple things in your relationship, like have a different type of night with things that you watch or things that you explore, or being able to explore each other in ways that you've wanted to and find out what you like and what you don't like. That's really helped our relationship tremendously. And we would not have got there if we wouldn't have had that crazy sex drive from, the treatment that we was getting from you. So you're doing incredible things.
I appreciate it.
And I see the amount of people that come into your business. That business, I know it's doing well for you, but there's been, just like any entrepreneur journey, there's always roadblocks. So if you look back through kind of your journey of starting the practice and your business and how it's transformed, what would you say the biggest challenge has been? Like if there's an entrepreneur out there that is getting ready to start a business and they pick up one thing from you today on the show, what would you say the biggest challenge or roadblock for you has been? And how'd you get over that?
I would say taxes.
Join the crowd.
I would say taxes. And I would say if I could go back in time and talk to young dinosaur entrepreneur going out there, one, it wouldn't be looking at just being with a CPA. I've been with probably 3 CPA practices or whatever they call themselves. And they have all been glorified H&R Blocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
That at the end of the year, they just collect the information and do the taxes for a business. You need to be with somebody who does tax avoidance, that knows how to prepare you for how do you use your business and what you do in your business in a different way to get your taxes down. I mean, we all have taxes that we got to pay. I mean, if you own a business, not only are you doing your taxes, but you're doing your payroll taxes, all of those different types of things that play into this. That would be probably the biggest thing that I would say, make sure you have that tight, because
I agree with you.
That has such a long lasting effect of that once you get behind on taxes, it is a lot to get out of that hole, depending on how big it is. My first tax bill. So because I didn't get with the right people, and this wasn't for a lack of not trying. I remember sitting in the office, and I won't even say the name of the CPA firm, but I sat in their office and I said, "Listen, the hospital is giving me. I think at the time we were getting over $500,000 to start the practice. Essentially, they were going to cover my salary plus some office expenses and different stuff for about 2 years. Essentially, is what it is, and that's pretty standard for a lot of physicians." And I said, I'm paying myself. How should I pay myself? It was, well, you could do draws or you could make yourself a W-2. Mm-hmm. Please, to the brand new entrepreneur, make yourself a W-2 of your business. You have to be a W-2, because when you start taking draws from your cash that's in the business, eventually you may get to learn the name of your IRS agent in the city, which me and Charlotte got to. I still have his number on my cell phone, because I had my first, the money that the hospital gave us, what they did is, the way that they forgave it is they forgave it to the tune of a 1099 mm-hmm. over I think it was over a 3-year time frame. So now, at the point in time when my practice is starting to build up and we're kind of supporting ourselves, we're having enough insurance money coming in to support ourselves, I then at the end of the year get hit with a 1099 to the tune of like $150,000.
Sure.
And I remember my accountants, I've been telling them that they knew what we were doing. No one helped me plan for that to happen. No one said, "Hey, you need to be doing this, this, and this as you guys go along." Very busy day in the office. I was seeing a bunch of patients. Had just finished up at noon. It should have finished up at noon, and it was 12:30 that I finished up. I go out to the lobby to grab my CPA who was coming in to bring my taxes. He comes into the office, hands me a bill for $30,000. And I'm just like, and I remember very vividly just kind of burying my head in the sand, because I'm like, what are we going to do to take care of that? So that part of the business, because that can completely sink a practice, and it can completely sink a business, because you don't know how to get yourself unburied from that, or you don't have that type of cash coming in,
right,
that would be able to take care of that. And now you get liens put on your business, you get liens put on your name, mm-hmm. and all of those different things are where I would say make sure that you have somebody that does that doesn't just do tax preparation, but does wealth planning for you.
Yeah, that's so important. The first year I got hit with a tax bill was $170,000, and you know what? I hadn't planned for it, and it was the same thing. I was talking to CPA and didn't have all that knowledge, right? Like, go buy an SUV, go buy a truck. You need to go to a conference.
Lord
in
have
Vegas,
mercy.
right?
You get to do all of these different things that you can write off that you would be doing kind of anyways. But
Right.
it's just knowledge is such a dangerous thing, because if you have it, you can be dangerous. If you don't have it, you're in a dangerous spot, because you don't know what things you don't know. And so really spending a lot of time understanding how to build wealth. And I'm still at the point where I really wish that I had have known some of the things that I know now 10 years ago.
Sure.
But
that's a story of most of our lives, right?
Yeah.
But for you and guys like you that have businesses like yours, and I found this out the hard way with our developmental disability services, there's virtually like no overhead, right? Like nothing to write off. Now with real estate, it's great, but there's lots of doctors, lots of psychologists, lots of lawyers, lots of engineers that come to me for help, right? Because they want to have some type of shelter from taxes, and real estate is usually a great ticket. But when I first had our service business a couple years back, and I started looking at our taxes, and they said, well, you're going to owe like $200,000-300,000 in tax. I said, holy shit, right? Like I didn't understand the impact.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tax planning that goes into it to defer it. And I can only imagine, but I think that's I would agree with you. If you're going to do anything, like we can figure out the business, we can figure out how to open up an LLC, but have a financial advisor, have a great CPA team with consultants that have wealth planning.
It cannot just be somebody that does. It really has to be somebody that does tax planning.
Absolutely.
Because outside of that, you might as well, if you could take your business to an H&R Block, you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
All
right, now we got the young couples that are out there. I wouldn't say young. I was in my 30s before I saw you. But if there's a couple out there that is maybe having some intimacy issues, or maybe the sex life isn't what it used to be, like when is the point where they need to come see somebody like you? Like what would you tell them? Like if you're feeling this way or this is happening, you should see a hormone doctor.
Yeah. I would say that most women 30 plus hormones are already starting to go downhill. And it's just, like I said, it's just a naturally occurring thing. I would say for guys, the same thing. You would see, and it's interesting because when you look at the literature, there really isn't a lot about young guys and testosterone levels. Since I've been doing this, I've seen the guy that I saw that was in his 30s. A normal testosterone runs you between 300 to 1,000. When you're in your late teens, early 20s, you're sitting around 1,000. This guy that came in and he was in his 30s, and there's something going on with guys in the military, which I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but the guys that I've seen with these super low testosterones, there's been several of them from the military. He came in and his testosterone was 60.
Oh man!
And so, what effect does that have on you as a whole when you are normally, when you should be somewhere in that, in your 30s, I would say 500 plus. I would say most of my guys that come in for treatment are 500 or less. So the goal would be, one, if you're not communicating when it comes to sex, that may be the easiest and first thing to do. Now, when I say communicating, I'm actually saying that there is an understanding of you guys both want to talk, because me and my wife would communicate about it, but it was a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of sometimes yelling, sometimes, and there was this huge disappointment on both sides. That she at one point she was like, if I could hire somebody for you, I would. Because her thing was, and if, for the women out there, if they feel like this, she's like, it's not that I don't want to, I just don't have any desire. Mm-hmm. And for the women, I would say if that's where you're sitting at, and the desire is just not there, then there's probably a hormonal component to it that can be helped. Then once you get pushed up to a spot, then that's when you really have to kind of dive into the mental portion of it, which is talking about sex and understanding what your partner loves and all that different type of stuff. For a lot of women, and I'll say it from their perspective, and this is what I've experienced in practice. For a lot of women, they have sex out of obligation. If they're with their significant other, their husband, they have it out of obligation. It is a checklist thing for them to do because they know, let me give him some, he'll be quiet for the, and then it's like a mental clock gets set because they know this is how long I got to the next time.
Sure.
If I can keep him quiet, I can knock him down, put him to sleep, and then I ain't got to deal with him. For me, that ain't what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for the connection. I'm looking for the intimacy. I'm looking for that love language to be really fulfilled and not be tolerated. So I would say for the women, if they're at a place where it's a checklist thing for them to do, that they need to look and see, who is it I need to talk to? The hormone piece is one piece. The next piece I think would be then possibly even looking at some counseling along that way so that you can get a better understanding of where you sit at and how you move things forward. For the guys, a lot of the guys, it would be honestly probably just boosting up their testosterone levels.
We don't need a lot to get our sex life back in rhythm.
And I don't want to ostracize those guys that may need a little bit more, because there are some people, because then you really feel like an outsider.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because if everybody just needs a breeze or just needs to see, she just needs to brush by you and you good, and you're not that guy, then you probably do need to, one, I would say, were you that guy? Have you been that guy? Because for some relationships, if the woman has never really had a good sex drive, I don't think that just giving her testosterone is going to make her have a sex drive. If she really don't like you, you got a whole nother issue going on, because once again, her mind is her biggest sex organ. And so you have to be able to, in essence, get in her mind so that you can get things rolling. For us, for the majority of guys, it's kind of a weird dynamic that God gave us these women who don't have the same drive by and large, and it's not the same for everybody. But as we get older, and older to me hormonally, like I said, it's probably in the 30s that you start to see those changes.
Well, man, there's been so many gold nuggets, so much powerful stuff in here. And if I haven't said it, thank you for adding rocket fuel to my sex life, because it has changed the trajectory of our relationship. And it's been a big part of it, honestly.
Yeah.
I know you're a busy guy, man. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I appreciate you taking the time out.
Thanks for having me.
Now, last question. Do you have a hormone that helps black comedians to stop dating all white girls? Is he still in the room?
Why you say my name?
I didn't say that. You're feeling guilty.
Hold up, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what up